Chapter 472. At this moment, Jingwan did not know that there were guests at the farmstead, and there was more than one of them. The guests were watching them from a distance, watching the couple laughing and fooling around. They were so intimate. It seems like we came at the wrong time today. Today, Sun Ijia, who was wearing beautiful peach blossom makeup, had a light smile on her face. She had a relaxed posture as she wrapped the handkerchief around her finger, slowly loosening it and wrapping it around her finger again. But it seems like this trip was not in vain. Yuan Xiao smiled meaningfully. Yes. Sun Ijia nodded. The second young mistress of the Luo family, Lady Zhao, also smiled lightly. Because she was pregnant, she appeared very gentle and had the motherly instincts of a mother. Moreover, her relationship with Luo Jingming had truly entered the honeymoon stage. After she became pregnant, her husband was very considerate and did not sleep with her. She felt very comfortable and did not have any adverse reactions during pregnancy. She was very nourished. Of course, they were not the only ones who came. Their respective husbands, 3 couples and 6 people, were also there. On the 3rd day of March, they were supposed to go out and have fun. Sun Yijia had received news that Jingwan would not return, so she decided to come and take a look. Yuan Xiao received the news, so how could she miss it? Then, she bumped into Luo Jingming and his wife, so they decided to come together. Since their wives were coming, the 3 men could only risk their lives to accompany them. They had to be prepared to risk their lives in the face of the King of Hell. However, the result was not very timely. Li Honyuan had previously instructed that unless Emperor Lu Qingdi passed away or Qi Yuan was destroyed, no one was to disturb them without his permission. Obviously, these 2 things could not happen at this time. Now, that only the princess consort's family came, of course, they could not report it. However, some things cannot be said clearly. In the end, it was Granny Gong who made the decision to bring them over. Yes, they could only watch from afar. Then, these 6 people were fiercely shown their affection by Li Honyuan and Jingwan. After that, the 3 grown men, to varying degrees, received their own wives' gazes. That was like hidden bitterness, like an accusation look at Jin Wang. Then look at you. Why didn't you learn properly? The 3 men felt different degrees of heartache. Prince Jin, who was once a playboy and loved for 7 days, was actually regarded as a role model of a good husband. Even their wives wanted them to learn more. Just the thought of it made one's heart ache. Cousin-in-law, what should we do next? Go back or... Go back? Go back for what? Sun Yijia waved her hand and then looked at Granny Gong with a smile. Granny, we are a little tired from the journey. Can I trouble you to bring a few stools for us to sit and rest for a while? She had made up her mind not to leave for the time being. At this moment, Zhao Shi and Yuan Xiao were following Sun Yijia's lead, especially Zhao Shi. If she wanted to sit for a while, it was even more above board. Therefore, the 3 men's opinions were completely ignored. As for Sun Yijia's request, Granny Gong was naturally satisfied because she did not think there was any problem at all. Their place was relatively hidden. They could see Jingwan and the others clearly, but they could not easily see them. Of course, this was only relative to Jingwan. As for whether they could hide from Li Honyuan, it was hard to say. However, Li Honyuan was still pushing the swing rhythmically, not moving at all. Not only did Granny Gong ask people to bring stools, she also prepared fruits and tea. From the looks of it, she did not mind at all how long they had to do it. These people had long been used to being tortured by their own 2 masters. They should let outsiders have taste. Jingwan was completely unaware that there was a group of onlookers beside her. She was still having fun. As for the 6 people who stayed, they had different thoughts. The 3 women were more or less a little envious, jealous, and hateful in their hearts. Say, how could Jin Wang be such a man? Could it be fake? Even if it was during Jingwan's birthday banquet last time, they had already seen some clues, but they didn't expect that when it was completely in private, it would be to this extent. This was completely a devoted and infatuated type who only had his own wife in his heart. If it was other people, those people who had always been clean and honest, they would definitely be able to easily accept it and even feel that it was natural. However, this person was Jin Wang, so this feeling was completely not on the same level. That's why. Wang Mimi's life is really good. However, this is also how it should be. Wang Mimi is such a good person. If her husband did not treat her well, then he would be guilty of 10,000 deaths. Sun Yijia sighed. The little bit of emotion in her heart also disappeared, and she happily looked on. Luo Jingbua glanced at Sun Yijia, then looked at the maidservants and guards beside her. Each and every one of them acted as if they did not hear anything. He silently chose to shut his mouth, but he secretly prayed in his heart that his wife would not say any more shocking words. Saying that Jin Xinwang guilty of 10,000 deaths in front of so many people? Did he really want to die? Even if it was the truth, it could not be said so casually. Sun Yijia seemed to know her husband's thoughts. She turned back to look at him and gave him an elegant, supercilious look. What are you afraid of? Their Wang Fei is in front of them. Even if Jin Xinwang knows, what can he do? That's why you were so fearless. In any case, she was born in Duke Ding Fu, which was a 1,000-year-old aristocratic family. She had a first-class upbringing. How did she become such an insolent person? This was the common thought in everyone's mind. Luo Jingbua did not refute his wife, because what his wife said was reasonable. The other two big men beside him became more and more stifled. They could even foresee their own miserable future. They did not have any desire to eat fruits, tea, or whatever. They were already full from looking at it. That's why they did not realize that they were actually full from being fed dog food. Generally speaking, this kind of scene was definitely self-abuse. Usually, no one would foolishly continue to look at it. However, Sun Yijia stood firm, and the other two women followed. The rest could only be helpless. Unknowingly, Jingwan stopped and quietly sat on the swing. Her head leaned against the rope at the side and quietly looked at Li Hongyuan, because Li Hongyuan unexpectedly took a chin from the begonia tree and sat on the ground. The chin was placed on his lap, and the sentimental music unhurriedly floated out. Many petals also fell on the surrounding grass. The swing stopped, and the falling petals also slowed down. It must be said that the several people who were melon eaters all had a certain level of cultivation in the field of music. After all, this was a compulsory course. Even if they did not know how to play, they still had a basic level of appreciation. Jin Xinwang's qin skills were simply beyond people's expectations. That song could be said to be soft and tender, expressing the meaning of love. Sun Yijia was unexpectedly silent. Or perhaps, at this moment, she was truly relieved of Jingwan. Her attainments in the art of the qin were naturally extraordinary. She was very clear that the difference between a song that was played with pure skills and a song that was played with sincere feelings could be said to be the difference between heaven and earth. Just like now, if Jin Xinwang did not love Wang Mimi to the extreme, he would absolutely not be able to play such a song. Just by listening to it, it could soften a person's heart, as if she was carefully held in the palm of his hand and placed on top of his heart. At this moment, she finally admitted that Jin Xinwang was not so annoying. Sun Yijia stood up. It's about time, let's go. You're leaving? Cousin-in-law, wait for the Lantern Festival. Wait until you finish listening to this song before you leave. Sun Yijia laughed. Listen to it before you leave? I'm afraid that after you finish listening, you will dislike someone to death. As she said this, she glanced at Yuan Xiaoqiao's husband with ridicule. The other party was a bit embarrassed, and Yuan Xiaoqiao also reacted. All right, there was also a bit of embarrassment on her face. The three big men were naturally eager to leave. If this continued, it would really not be good. On the way out, Yuan Xiaoqiao returned to her original nature. Everyone says that Jin Xinwang is worthless. Who would have thought that he would be so powerful? Cousin-in-law, you say us married women have all been affected. If those people at Wang Mimi's birthday banquet who had thoughts about Jin Xinwang, what would they do if they heard it? First of all, it's impossible for them to hear it. It's impossible for them to hear a song, let alone one that was played from the heart. Secondly, even if they accidentally heard it, would they have the courage to risk death or injury to throw themselves at it? Sun Yijia sneered. She couldn't even touch the corner of his clothes, yet she was still thinking about those useless things. Sun Yijia was originally a very intelligent woman. She was now very suspicious of Jin Wang's so-called wife-jinxing fate. It was hard to say about the previous ones, but were the previous ones really jinxed them? Soon after, Sun Yijiao looked at Yuan Xiao again and reached out to pat her. Some words shouldn't be spoken irresponsibly. In any case, leave some face for your husband. Being affected by another man's zither music or something. Yuan Xiao's husband's face was indeed a bit gloomy. Yuan Xiao looked over, unrepentant, and stuck out her tongue at him in a place where other people couldn't see, making funny faces like a child. This man was very clear about his wife's nature. What was there to be gloomy about? His heart was full of helplessness. However, although the women he came into contact with were wrong, there were still quite a few. There were older sisters and younger sisters in the family, as well as older sisters-in-law and the cousins outside. There were very few who had a heart as pure as his wife. Getting along with her was much more comfortable than getting along with other people. Just based on this, he was willing to protect her, pamper her, and tolerate her a little. Luo Jingbo and Luo Jingming, before Yuan Xiao's marriage, had interacted with this young master of the capital magistrate's family. Their relationship could be considered quite good. At this moment, they both revealed an ambiguous smile. After all, they more or less knew about this younger cousin's temperament. They came and left, but Jingwan didn't know it all. At this moment, she was engrossed in listening to the zither music. Sun Yijia, who was relatively indifferent to Jin Wang, had a soft heart. What about her? Who was at the center? What about her? Who was the subject of the zither master? Jingwan looked straight at Li Hongyuan's deep eyes, which were filled with the same feelings as the zither music. Jingwan felt that it wouldn't be too much to drink herself to death inside. After Li Hongyuan changed the song, Jingwan softly opened her mouth. Li Hongyuan didn't answer, but his eyes showed that he was waiting for her to speak. Change it. My heart can't take it anymore. Her heart was beating a little fast. Li Hongyuan chuckled. Okay. In reality, Jingwan wasn't much different from being drunk right now. Because of her accelerated heartbeat, her face was flushed red, and the corners of her eyes were flushed red like waves of passion. Her eyes seemed to be covered with a layer of mist. Li Hongyuan saw this and felt that Jingwan, who was under the crabapple tree at this moment, was simply beautiful to the extreme. However, there wasn't any desire in his heart. Regarding this moment of spiritual integration, it was also an extreme enjoyment. After that, Li Hongyuan changed the song, which was more lively and suited the beautiful spring scenery. Jingwan also gradually calmed down. That's right, her man wasn't useless. He was omnipotent. After another song, Li Hongyuan casually put the zither aside, got up, and walked to Jingwan's side. He reached out to lift her chin and kissed her on the lips. Then, he lifted her up and sat on the swing. With one hand holding Jingwan in his arms and the other holding the rope, he touched the ground with one foot. With a slight force, the swing swayed in a small arc with the two of them. Occasionally, petals would fall, and Jingwan would reach out to catch them. Then, she would gently blow at them and watch them float further away. Looking at them, she couldn't help but smile. Occasionally, they would whisper as if they were reminiscing about the past and looking forward to the future. When it was quiet enough, they began to go crazy everywhere. By the time they returned to the villa, the sun was already setting in the west. That was to say, the two of them went out after breakfast and came back before dinner. Lunch? They ate a lot along the way. How could they be hungry? After all, when they were almost done playing, sitting together to eat something was also a kind of fun. When they had dinner and digested the food, Jingwan knew that Sun Yijia and the others had come. Nanny Gong told her that the prince and princess you didn't see any guests today, so they left after sitting for a while. Jingwan didn't ask any more questions. She didn't want to neglect her relatives and friends. Her wedding anniversary with her husband was more important. After digesting the food, Jingwan began to pack up the biggest gift of the day, which was 90 jade dolls. Jingwan felt that she should prepare a special cabinet of many treasures. These dolls shouldn't be buried at the bottom of the box, but should be placed in front of her. In the end, when they fell asleep, Li Hongyuan didn't see the surprise prepared by his wife. His eyes flashed, but he didn't ask. He roughly understood that the surprise prepared by his wife was probably a birthday gift for him. However, Li Hanyuan became more and more curious about the fact that she had started to prepare so early. That was true. Wang had already said that she would let him arrange everything for today. As for the arrangements, he naturally had to make all the arrangements. Because their hearts and minds were intertwined during the day, their harmony at night would be more harmonious and wonderful. https:///11/11807/115264443. Mobile Edition. Chapter 473. If this went on, the living king of hell would most likely become a fatuous ruler from time to time in the future. However, whether he was a fatuous ruler or not, to Li Hanyuan, it really didn't affect him. In any case, he had already been a tyrant before, but he was very confident. Even if he was a fatuous ruler, as long as he didn't deliberately play around, Qi Yuan's country wouldn't collapse. However, with Jingwan by his side, he wanted to give her the glory and splendor of the Golden Age. How could he go crazy and play around with Qi Yuan's country? In the days that followed, it could be said that the two people didn't pay attention to outside matters, wholeheartedly only accompanying the other person. In addition to half of the time that Jingwan was busy preparing the birthday gift for Li Hanyuan, the other half was the two people holding hands to wind, flower, snow, and moon, painting together, growing flowers together, playing, riding horses, and seeing the precious beast garden that a certain person used all his strength to build. It really was flying in the sky, running on the ground, living in the water. Everything that should be there was there. If this super garden was really known by people, the memorials to impeach Jin Xinwang would be piled up with Lu Chengdi's imperial case. Jingwan was more or less a bit worried. No matter how much Lu Chengdi favored this son, he was still the emperor. Thinking about the history of her previous life, there was a certain emperor who only built a leopard house. Although other people might have built a tiger city, elephant house, leopard house, pigeon house, deer farm, eagle house, and many other places to raise animals, the number was limited and almost turned into dogs. Well, it was said that those were places for pleasure, but they were also labeled as extravagant. Those things, compared to the current precious beast garden, were completely not on the same level. Li Hanyuan didn't care. The people who went to various places to search for these things were all the ones that I asked for from him. It was completely done in the open. No matter how they impeach, it's just extravagance. Using the crime of extravagance to impeach me is completely meaningless. Who doesn't know that Jin Xinwang is extravagant by nature? Well, some worries were indeed superfluous. Since a certain person dared to do it, then there definitely wouldn't be any problems. Even if there was a problem, it could definitely be solved. He had no worries at all and was completely unrestrained. He was having a lot of fun. Of course, Jingwan was determined not to let her brain become numb. From that day onwards, she dealt with some matters every day without fail. Recently, it was relatively peaceful, so Jingwan almost took care of all the matters in Li Hanyuan. If it was someone else, their wife being so motivated, they might think that she was harboring evil intentions. On the contrary, Li Hanyuan was happy and relaxed. While Jingwan was burying her head in hard work, he leisurely took a book, made a cup of tea, or prepared some good wine. While he was at it, he would also order some dishes to go with the wine. Occasionally, he would also ask the musicians to play some soothing tunes outside. Afterwards, he would comfortably half lean back. How could he be so satisfied? Jingwan was gnashing her teeth as she watched, especially when she encountered more brain-burning matters. She really wanted to strangle him to death. Several times, she wanted to go on strike. Why did she have to work herself to death while a certain person was leisurely? These matters were still his matters. However, every time this happened, Li Hanyuan would always coolly look at her. When doing things, you must finish what you started. You can't give up halfway. At the beginning, it was Wan herself who asked for it. How can you not do it because it's hard? This husband will comply with you, but this matter is absolutely not allowed. Jingwan wanted to vomit blood. Was she afraid of working too hard? That was not the case at all, okay? It was just that the contrast was too obvious, and she felt seriously unbalanced. Jingwan also sneered. Then please move away, Prince. Don't hinder me here. Look at what Wan is saying. First, this husband didn't say anything. Second, I didn't disturb you. How am I hindering you? This husband just saw that Wan was working hard and wanted to be by your side like you always do. Wan used to be like this. Wan was very happy. I thought that Wan would also be happy if this husband did this. Now, hearing Wan say this husband can't help but feel sad. What did it mean to talk nonsense with a straight face? This was a typical example. However, Jingwan could not give him a taste of his own medicine, because this trick did not work on her at all. If you enjoy it, he will enjoy it with you. You don't have to worry about things being unfinished. This was the difference between them. She could not drive him away or destroy him. Jingwan could only continue to work bitterly and not look at him. Out of sight, out of mind. Out of sight, out of mind. She immersed all her thoughts in the business, and a certain someone's existence was dispensable. Jingwan was serious, so Li Honyuan stopped reading and just stared at her attentively. After finishing the last task, Jingwan felt a little stiff all over. Before she could move, Li Honyuan was already standing behind her, gently massaging her shoulders and neck. Jingwan exhaled, grabbed Li Hongyuan's hand, and rubbed it comfortably. Then, she realized in hindsight, "Ai, that's not right, Yuan. At that time, I clearly said that no matter how much I was in charge of, I would only be responsible for half." And what's the problem? Li Hongyuan's expression did not change. "But these were all handled by me," Jingwan hatefully said. "Because only half of them were sent. I have already handled the other half," Li Honyuan said calmly without blushing or skipping a beat. Jingwan looked up and saw a certain someone smiling lightly. Forget it. She had already seen this face of his. There was no need to expose the fact that her IQ was not as good as his. She got up. "I'm tired. Go back to sleep. Today, I need a mama to help me loosen my muscles and bones. Your Highness, you should rest first." Li Honyuan rubbed his fingers and laughed. Was he being driven out of the room by his wife in disguise? However, the thick-skinned certain someone expressed that, not to mention in disguise, even if it was directly, it was impossible to drive him out. The days were so leisurely and bitter, idle and fulfilling. The 12th of the 3rd month, the death anniversary of the Imperial Gui Fei, Jin Xinwang's birthday. Perhaps because he knew that the Imperial Gui Fei was still alive, Lu Qing Emperor didn't seem to be in an abnormal state this year. However, in some people's eyes, he was even more unreasonable. At least for the past few days, Lu Qing Emperor didn't go to court. All day long, he hugged the portrait of the Imperial Gui Fei and mumbled nonsense. He even hoped that the Imperial Gui Fei would possess the portrait. Then, the frequency of the two words Yuaner from his mouth became higher and higher. Hearing it made people's hearts tremble. His fear of Li Honyuan became deeper and deeper, and his killing intent increased day by day. However, it was obvious that he did not dare to act rashly at this time, because once he was investigated, even if he was not executed on the surface, he might be killed in private. Imperial Gui Fei was also in an unprecedented state of irritation. Although on the surface, she was still considered normal. Thinking about it, she thought that everything was in her hands, but in the end, there was a mistake. Her own son was poisoned by the same poison. Because it was the same thing, she began to be suspicious and thought that it was the Imperial Gui Fei's revenge. It was not that she did not have other suspicions, but it was too much of a coincidence. The idea of revenge always prevailed. Thus, no one wanted the Imperial Gui Fei's ritual to succeed more than her. Her attitude towards Li Honyuan also changed fundamentally. However, just like in previous years, she had people prepare a table of food and send it over to Li Honyuan. However, this year, Imperial Gui Fei was definitely not the only imperial concubine who was thinking about Li Honyuan. Imperial Gui Fei also had people prepare things in private. In the past, there was no way, but now that the mother and son had recognized each other, how could the Imperial Gui Fei be indifferent? Of course, when Li Honyuan was in the teeth of the storm, such a behavior would cause trouble, if she was not careful. However, Imperial Gui Fei did not refuse. No one knew better than her how torturous it was for the Imperial Gui Fei in her body. In addition, Great Elder Princess and the two elders of the Luo family also sent gifts to Li Honyuan. As for the table of food, it was casually ordered to be rewarded. It was obvious that Imperial Gui Fei would not be stupid enough to do anything to it. Therefore, Jingwan felt no pressure to reward people. Li Honyuan glanced at Jingwan and did not say anything. The success rate of taking action was high when others thought that it was impossible to take action. Moreover, this table of food had changed hands several times, and there could be problems at any time. Now, there were many people who wanted to take action against him. As his mother, Imperial Gui Fei treated Li Honyuan well, so she could not be suspected. Moreover, since Imperial Gui Fei could get the sterilization powder, which was usually undetectable, it was hard to guarantee that there would not be a second kind of poison. Of course, it was also possible that there was nothing wrong with any table of food. However, Li Honyuan was too lazy to care about these things. Now, his wife said that she was going to give him a birthday gift. After being mysterious for so long, it was finally time to unveil the veil. Now, except for this, he was not interested in anything else at all. There were open-air hot springs behind the main courtyard, and naturally, there were also built bathing pools. The entire bathing pool was very large. Because it was above the hot springs, there was no need for the existence of an earth dragon. At this moment, the surrounding gauze curtains were put down. There was no water in the bathing pool, so it was warm enough and not foggy. A large area next to the bathing pool was originally paved with white marble, but now it was covered with a dark carpet. Li Honyuan looked at the Arhut bed, which was placed well. There was a small jade table on it, as well as good wine and food. Li Honyuan gently raised the corners of his mouth and walked over unhurriedly. The Arhut bed was covered with a soft cushion and a big pillow. How could he fail to live up to such good intentions? Li Honyuan sat down and leaned back, leisurely and languid. He was no longer as strict as before. He pulled at his collar, and a certain aura on his body instantly soared. Li Honyuan poured a glass of wine, and music sounded in his ears. Directly in front of his eyes, a figure appeared behind the gauze curtain. Judging from the figure, it was his wife. There were two soft sounds outside, and the music in his ears changed. Jingwan's cloak that was tightly wrapped around her body slid down. However, there was still a layer of transparent white gauze on her body. Along with the music, Jingwan placed one hand on her head and the other open. She moved with the dance steps and parted the curtain. Step by step, she stepped forward. Li Hongyuan's eyes narrowed slightly. Although he had expected that it might be related to dancing, when he really saw it, he was still quite surprised, or rather, quite happy. Although the white gauze was wide because it was transparent, he could see everything inside. A gorgeously decorated tube top? It should be a tube top, but it was like two petals tightly wrapped around the snowy peaks. Her flexible waist, without a trace of fat, was perfect, and there were jewels on her navel. A palm-wide waist belt wrapped around her crotch, and there was a net-like bead chain outside, which was relatively thin. Inside the belt, there was also a transparent, low-waisted white gauze skirt, and inside, the underwear was also clearly visible. Her bare feet, and there was also a chain around her ankle. Because the color of the carpet was dark, the contrast was very obvious, and it was also exceptionally beautiful. Li Honyuan couldn't help but sit up straight, and his body leaned forward slightly. Although Jingwan and Li Honyuan couldn't be more intimate, being stared at like this still made her feel a little uncomfortable. However, her body was a great attraction to her husband, and it seemed to be something to be happy about. Therefore, Jingwan endured, twirled, and danced, and the wide gauze fluttered. https://11/11807/115264446 HTML. Chapter 474. Her waist swayed, and at a certain point, her veil was lifted, revealing her exquisite makeup. The music suddenly became faster, and Jingwan's waist also followed the rapid swaying. Wearing the accessories on her body, it was exceptionally dazzling. Her feet touched the ground, and she gorgeously turned around. She rapidly moved her arms. Only then did they discover that there was a cut at the back of the waistband, and the seam of her buttocks was faintly discernible. Her beautiful hair, after being slightly styled, the ends of her hair just happened to be above the two shallow dimples. The dancing frequency was too fast, as if there were afterimages, making people dizzy. At least, our Jin Qinhuang's eyes became more serene and serene. His mouth was a bit dry, and his body seemed to have drunk too much. Feeling a bit hot, he reached out and pulled his collar open a bit more. But in fact, he hadn't even drunk the second cup of wine. Holding it in his hand, the cup was already a bit cracked. Jingwan turned sideways, and her gaze fell on Li Hongyuan's body. It seemed that because she had started, it wasn't that difficult to continue. Her dancing body became more relaxed, and with a very shallow smile, the amorous light in her eyes, the frequency of the movements at her waist also decreased. Slanting towards Li Hongyuan, the top of her hips turned outwards, circling round and round. Her hand fluttered above her head and then retracted. As if it was not there, it brushed past her own body, chest, waist, and abdomen. Her body continued to turn a few more rounds. The gauze skirt along with the beaded necklace all flew apart. The temptation of the previous moment, at this moment, brought about elegance and gentleness. Following that, Jingwan's waist was like a water snake, swaying back and forth. Naturally, the position under the flower petals on her chest also drew out an obvious arc. With a bang, the wine in Li Hongyuan's hand was finally scrapped. The wine dripped down along with his palm, but he didn't care at all. He casually shook it twice and leaned back, lifting one leg to step on the arhat bed. He raised his hand to support his cheek. Regarding the changes in his body, he didn't conceal it all. However, the expression on his face didn't change. There was neither forbearance nor pain. When Jingwan first entered the capital, at Dingguogong Fu, for some reason, Sun Yijia performed a dance in public. Li Hongyuan's gaze wasn't on Sun Yijia's body. His thoughts were all kinds of drifting, thinking about the scene of Jingwan performing a dance, especially the kind where one piece of clothing was missing. Later, when their relationship became intimate and even married, he forgot about this matter. The effect of today's dance was countless times better than expected. Speaking of which, Li Hongyuan had a rough idea of what Jingwan had learned. Although Jingwan was only 8 or 9 years old when he first sent people to Qian Prefecture, how could a girl from an official's family learn this kind of dance before the age of 8 or 9? No matter when she started learning it, it should be more proper and orthodox, just like Sun Yijia. Then, when did Wan learn it? The answer was obvious. According to common sense, since she was able to perform this dance for him as a birthday gift, then she definitely wouldn't have learned it under any humiliating circumstances. After all, their hearts were connected. There was no need for her to lower herself and deliberately seek his favor. Moreover, during the entire preparation process, he didn't feel any negative emotions from her. Therefore, she simply wanted to perform it for him to see and add a bit of fun between husband and wife. Thinking about all these, this dance should be quite ordinary for Wan in the past. Li Hongyuan secretly clicked his tongue in his heart. He was a little unhappy. His Wan might have been seen by someone else. Jingwan didn't know that Li Hongyuan's mind had thought so much in such a short time. She was focused on the rhythm of the music. Towards the end, she became more and more open. Like flowing water, like waves, like a burning flame, she freely used her body to express herself. Her arms spread out like wings, and her head danced like a snake. She shook her hips and body to her heart's content. Sometimes she was elegant, sometimes charming, sometimes delicate, and sometimes a little arrogant. Her eyes seemed to move along with the mood of the dance. It was very sexy, very seductive, and very provocative. It made people's hearts tremble. The charming special capital was vividly displayed by Jingwan. It was too much for the eyes to take in. In the end, Jingwan's body knelt on the ground. Her body bent backward and stretched to the maximum angle. The curve from her neck to her legs was fully displayed. The music had stopped. Jingwan maintained his posture and looked at Li Hongyuan from the bottom to the top. Because the choreography took a little long, Jingwan's breathing was a little rapid. Her chest was obviously moving up and down. There was also a thin layer of sweat, which seemed to be soft and watery. Especially in the position where Li Hongyuan was standing, the cleavage was prominent and indescribably attractive. The evil fire aroused by Jingwan was completely ignited. After the dance, if he could still sit still, he would really be a saint. He suddenly stood up. 3 steps turned into 2 steps. He bent down and hooked his arm. Jingwan followed his strength and stood up. She put one hand on his shoulder and the other on his chest. Li Hongyuan deliberately held her waist very tightly so that she could clearly feel his body's reaction. Li Hongyuan's other hand started from her cheek and slowly stroked down. Wan, are you satisfied with the effect of your dance? Jingwan suddenly laughed. Her hand mischievously touched Li Hongyuan's body. She even raised a leg and wrapped it around his leg. Slowly, she moved it up to his waist. Her breath smelled like orchids. Wang, are you satisfied? Li Hongyuan's hand paused. Then he held Jingwan's leg and pushed a layer of gauze to the base of her thigh. I've never seen Wan so enthusiastic. It seems that in the past, I didn't love Wan enough. This time, I will make Wan completely satisfied. Wan said that she won't get up for a few days, so we won't get up for a few days. Hey! Jingwan's head moved back. Although from the beginning, when she chose, it would definitely lead to this situation. She wanted to tease him, but she had prepared for so long and put in so much effort. Don't just focus on the result and completely ignore the dance. Wang still hasn't told this concubine. Are you satisfied with this birthday gift? The king of hell didn't lack anything, so it was quite difficult to give him a gift that he was satisfied with. As for why Jingwan knew how to do belly dance, it was all thanks to her mother in her previous life. One day, she was dragged by one of her best friends to learn it on a whim. She said that it could help her lose weight and shape her waist. She didn't know why her mother wanted to dance, but later on, her mother suddenly dragged her to learn it. Jingwan learned it. She was quite talented in it, and because of her good foundation in yoga, she learned it. In the end, she even beat the instructor. After the accident at home, there was a long period of turmoil. Later on, when she settled down, she would occasionally dance. But after she came to this world, she was too young at first. Later on, dancing like this was absolutely offensive to public morals. If people found out, she would be scolded to death. After all, she estimated that even the women in the brothel couldn't dance to this level. Naturally, she was forgotten in a corner. She didn't know why, but when she was thinking about preparing a birthday gift for someone, she didn't know why she remembered it. Although she had been neglected for a long time, but some things, once learned, would always be remembered. Even when she first picked it up, she spent a lot of time practicing the basic skills. After all, Jingwan wasn't a professional choreographer. If she wanted to find a song that met her requirements and wanted to make a good dance, it was actually a short period of time. After all, she couldn't ask for help. However, who asked those musicians to be so awesome? They had songs that gave her inspiration. After getting through the difficult initial stage, everything went smoothly. However, in the end, it was Jingwan who figured out the choreography by herself. Moreover, she didn't stick to any school. She just showed the essence of belly dance. The other parts were added casually. She just did it as she liked. From the many dressing mirrors, she felt that the effect was quite good. However, it was hard to guarantee how it would look in the eyes of others. Li Hongyuan naturally understood Jingwan's meaning and affirmed her efforts and results. Very good. Really? Yuan, don't love me for my dog. I have seen a lot of dances. I don't know how many kinds of dances there are. I think that my level of appreciation is still good enough. Jingwan understood. Her eyebrows and eyes curved into a smile, but this smile didn't last for a moment. Oh! Her body trembled slightly. She couldn't help but moan. She grabbed Li Hongyuan's mischievous hand. We can talk about this later. Wan should continue to send the gifts now. Li Hongyuan said. He held her neck and kissed her. His other hand became more and more unruly. Jingwan held his neck and catered to his kiss. She was reluctant to part with him. Li Hongyuan picked up Jingwan and walked to the side of the Arhut bed. He kicked away the jade table with wine. The jade table slid to the edge. The slender wine bottle on top shook and then fell down. The clear wine spilled out. However, the two people at the side didn't care about the wine. Li Hongyuan was burned by the evil fire and almost lost his reason. He only wanted to tear Jingwan apart and eat her. Jingwan was under his hands and naturally couldn't be distracted. The task was completed. The musicians outside naturally should leave quickly. However, some people dilly-dallied for some unknown purpose. However, Jingwan's maidservants and mamas wouldn't give him a chance. As the musicians of Jin Xin Wang Fu, if they overstepped their duty, they would definitely not have a good ending. No matter how good their skills were or how beautiful they were, it was the same. Although the people around Jingwan didn't know what dance Jingwan was dancing, but Jingwan's clothes were made by them. They didn't know the process, but the final result could be guessed. Therefore, everyone was well aware of what was going on inside. They consciously walked a little further away, and the rest were not allowed to enter. Now it was an unusual time. No matter what the reason was for the dawdling musician, Gong Mama expressionlessly greeted Mu Gonggong and told him how to deal with it. Mu Gonggong was an expert in this field. In Jingwan's death-seeking aroused Li Hongyuan to this point. It was obvious that the pleasure of fish and water would not end so easily. At least, during this period, Li Hongyuan let Gong Mama come in and change the water in the bath 3 times. And in the whole place, there were many traces of lovemaking. Fortunately, it was more convenient for the bath to be filled with water, and it was easy to clean. Otherwise, changing the water once was not an easy task, let alone one person to do it. Every time Gong Mama came in, she didn't look sideways because she was used to this kind of thing. Jingwan also wouldn't be shy and play dead like at the beginning. At most, she would be together with a certain someone and use something to cover her body. In fact, towards the end, Gong Mama wanted to say something but hesitated. She wanted to persuade Wang Yi to restrain himself a little. Too much indulgence was not good for Wang Fei's health. That's right, she only cared about Jingwan. Li Hongyuan had nothing to do with her. But after thinking about it, he wouldn't listen even if she said it. She would just pay attention to Wang Fei's health. Besides, it wasn't like he did it every night. Once he did it too hard, the days after were still relatively long. In the end, Jin Xin Wang didn't really have a sense of propriety. When the living king of hell stopped, the outside was already shrouded in the curtain of night. Dinner time had already passed. Therefore, it wasn't hard to see why the gift was sent out in the middle of the day. If the gift was sent before going to bed, she wouldn't be able to sleep well. For people with a regular schedule, if they didn't go to bed on time, it would definitely be very bad. At this time, Li Hongyuan was holding Jingwan and sitting in the huge bath. There was a layer of flower petals scattered on top of the bath. The steam was rising and the fragrance was overflowing. Compared to here, Li Hongyuan actually preferred to soak in the open-air hot spring outside. The water was up to her chest. Li Hongyuan gently massaged Jingwan's waist to ease the discomfort in her waist. At the same time, he opened his mouth. Wan's dance today, who else saw it? Every day, she practiced alone. The musicians were all outside playing. It's not like you don't know. Who else could have seen it? Jingwan leaned on his body and didn't want to move at all. After a long period of vigorous exercise, even with her physique that had been exercising for a long time, her hands and feet were soft and her whole body was powerless. She could only play with a strand of his hair with her fingers, as she lazily said. It was said that there were only tired cows and no land that was plowed. However, the cow known as the living king of hell was too strong. After such a consumption, he still looked like nothing happened. On the contrary, Jingwan's land was really unbearable. Then, what about when you were learning this dance? A certain person's eyes were dark and unfathomable. He still had the energy to care about these things. Jingwan finally understood. She snorted in laughter. This jealousy was too unreasonable. Every time I wore this kind of clothing, at most it was low-waisted trousers and a long-sleeve top that exposed the navel. However, if a certain person saw that kind of clothing, he would probably still be jealous. Therefore, it was better not to talk about the details. However, Li Hongyuan's IQ was not damaged at all now. Thinking of the appearance of Jingwan when she danced, if the most prominent position of the whole dance was covered tightly, what effect could it have? It was enough to show that even when she first learned, at least her waist was exposed. His wife was silly now and thought that he was easy to fool. However, there were some things that couldn't be cared too much. If he cared too much about it, it would really be meaningless and hurt feelings. It took him half an hour to calm down. Although he still didn't want to move, his stomach was already protesting. https:///11/11807/116345777 HTML. Chapter 475. A level 9 handicap would be in high spirits the next day. Therefore, if Jin Xinhuang wanted his wife to not be able to get out of bed for a few days, it was basically impossible unless he really hurt her. But would Li Honyuan do that? Certainly not. During breakfast, Li Honyuan seemed to have thought of something. Qing, what instructions does Wang Ye have? Qing Zhu, who was serving at the side, hurriedly crouched and asked. Jingwan also looked at him curiously. What about Wang Fei's clothes from yesterday? Li Honyuan asked faintly. When he said this, not only the servant girls, even Jingwan blushed a little. If it was in her previous life, then she wouldn't say anything. That kind of clothes was not a big deal, but it was different now. It had been more than 10 years. Jingwan's thoughts must have been greatly affected. Thinking about it, when that dress was mentioned, what would the people around her think? How could she not be angry? Without thinking, she subconsciously kicked him under the table and glared at him, telling him to shut up. Li Honyuan was not the least bit affected and even gave Jingwan some food to eat. Qing Zhu vaguely sized up the two masters, replying to Wang Ye, Wang Fei's clothes have been washed. Then after you bring it back, keep it well. Li Hongyuan's expression was still indifferent. Keep it for what? I won't wear it in the future. Deal with it. This kind of thing, it was done once. Was there next time? Li Honyuan glanced at Jingwan and continued to eat unhurriedly. After a moment, he opened his mouth. Some special things, even if you don't use it in the future, you should keep it well. Just like Wan's red wedding dress. Although it was two different sets of clothes, could the two be compared? That emotional woman, she might think that it was belittling her. But if it was Li Honyuan, Jingwan knew that the meaning was absolutely the opposite. Wang Ye thinks highly of it. Li Honyuan waved his hand and dismissed the servants. To your husband, it is naturally important. After all, this is the first time someone has celebrated my birthday so solemnly. Li Hongyuan's expression did not change at all, but Jingwan immediately felt distressed. She reached out and held Li Hongyuan's hand. Yuan, I'm here. I'll be there for you in the future. Wan didn't even want to leave her clothes behind. Jingwan seemed to have heard the accusation, saying that she would be there in the future. In the end, he didn't even want to leave behind a single piece of clothing. He was simply insincere. If a Yuan likes it, he can stay. Jingwan felt that she was digging a hole for herself. My wife is so easy to coax. However, only someone who truly cared about you would be like this, because she was willing to be coaxed by you. Then every year in the future, on my birthday, Wan will dance for me, okay? Until you can't dance anymore. This was what it meant to be insatiable. Jingwan's expression cracked a little. She retracted her hand. What heartache! She should have fed it to the dogs. She expressionlessly said, How can you give me the same gift every year? For some things, once is enough. Besides, when I'm 50 or 60 years old, I might still be very healthy. If you dance then, you won't be afraid that you'll be blind. Do whatever you want. Jingwan did not intend to pay attention to him. She was still not full. Li Honyuan had long stopped caring about the fact that no one had ever given him a birthday. Even in his previous life, when he became the emperor, he did not take a birthday celebration seriously at all. The courtiers earnestly advised him, and whether he wanted to do it or not depended entirely on his mood. However, when someone had no other purpose and had carefully prepared a gift for you, how could he be indifferent? People were greedy. If there was one, there would naturally be another. Even if Wan's teeth fell out, your husband would still kiss her. What's the point of dancing at 60 years old? 60 years old might still be the same as yesterday. Li Honyuan calmly looked at Jingwan, as if he was still a little unsatisfied. Then I'm sorry. You're not blind, but I don't have the cheek to dance. Speaking of which, a body covered in orange peel, belly dancing? What kind of international joke was this? That was not sexy, it was purely an eyesore. Would it still be the same as yesterday? His body did not want to, and his heart probably did not want to. And a man in his 60s or 70s hugging a little girl to warm the bed was very normal. TSK. Thinking of this, her heart seemed to be unhappy. Although it was really boring to ask if someone would have a change of heart after a few decades. Li Honyuan moved to Jingwan's side and leaned close to her ear. At 60 years old, Wanwan is still as beautiful as a flower. Jingwan cast a sidelong glance at him and sneered. At 60 years old, a Yuan is a mess of an old man. Is that so? Li Honyuan hugged Jingwan and kissed her. Isn't that just right? Messy old men all like beautiful women. His skin was super thick, and he was even more gluttonous. Therefore, this kind of thing, in the end, basically all roads lead to the same destination. Fortunately, a certain person had eaten his fill yesterday. Even if he was still in the mood now, he would not do anything in consideration of Jingwan's body. At most, he would just kiss and touch her. Yesterday's matter was not dealt with, so it would definitely take a little more time today. Moreover, it would be dealt with after breakfast and not piled up until the evening. Regarding Jingwan's dedication to her job, the subordinates expressed that compared to her, Wang Yi seemed to be a little too unqualified. Everyone had already expected that in the future, when Wang Fei was fully familiar with these matters, Wang Yi would completely wash his hands of the matter and directly look for Wang Fei whenever there was a problem. In Li Hongyuan's eyes, he was the one who usurped the throne. Those who did not know would think that it was his wife, TSK. Jingwan was dealing with matters while listening to Imperial bodyguard Qian and Yi's report about Jing City. Although he was no longer a hidden guard, it was not different from what he did before. After all, he was more familiar with it, but he was sure that he would not be sent out on missions again. Yesterday evening, the Imperial physician diagnosed Princess Rui's pregnancy pulse. Hearing this, Jingwan stopped what she was doing and turned to look at Li Honyuan. Is she really pregnant? If not, she would definitely not dare to let the Imperial physician diagnose her pulse with great fanfare. Li Hongming's luck is really good. Li Honyuan did not have any reaction, but even if she is really pregnant, so what? At that time, it will not only confuse the royal bloodline, but also Princess Rui's promiscuity in the imperial harem, or Prince Rui can't have children. For the sake of the throne, he will not hesitate to let an outsider defile his princess. It will be more fun, right? Jingwan was silent. Prince Rui had already taken the sterilization powder. The person who drugged her must know that she could not have children. Then, no matter how the child came about, there must be a problem. It was like yellow mud falling into the crotch of the trousers. If it was not that, it would be that. According to someone's plan, if she was really pregnant, it would be worse than a fake pregnancy. Although this plan was a little vicious, Jingwan did not mean to stop it at all. On the contrary, if she is really pregnant, it may not be a boy. In this case, it must be a boy just in case. After all, there may not be another chance in the imperial harem of Prince Rui's mansion. Of course, this child must be a boy. Where do you think this child will come from, Your Highness? No matter where it comes from, it's okay if it is not used. Once it is used, it will be a dead end. That was an innocent little life. Wan's emotions are always written on her face. Well, don't think so much. I will try my best to keep the child and let the child return to his parents. However, Wan, you have to know that this may not be a good thing for the child. Jingwan certainly understood that the child who could be chosen was very likely to have some problems. For example, he was not expected by others, and someone did not want the child to exist. Because the more it was like this, the more the tail could be cleaned as much as possible. Yuan, help if you can. If it will cause you trouble, just ignore it. No matter whether the child is innocent or not, it is an outsider. You are the most important. Her compassion was based on a premise. Li Honyuan smiled. It's not a big deal. Jingwan also smiled. She put this matter aside and waited for the child to be born. But now, imperial concubine Su and the others still could not relax because of this. After all, when they did not know the mastermind behind the scenes, they would inevitably be on tenterhooks. They did not know if the mastermind behind the scenes would play any tricks again. It was necessary to be 120% vigilant. Just thinking about it was tiring. Adoptive mother has not sent anyone to send the invitation yet. It is very likely that she will not hold a birthday banquet. Probably. Li Hanyuan was not interested. It did not matter whether these things were held or not. If they were held, they would just give face and make a trip. It would be better if they were not held. Recently, he was a little lazy and did not want to move. Then let's prepare the horse racing invitation. How about it? Up to you. Li Hanyuan said lazily, his whole body leaning on the couch again. Yuan, are you sleepy? Seeing him like this, Jingwan could not help but tease him. Probably. His eyes were half closed, as if he would fall asleep at any time. Jingwan looked at him. Her helplessness turned into worry in an instant. Let Gong Jiu take your pulse? Li Hanyuan opened his eyes and looked at Jingwan. Wan is thinking too much. It is Wan who is too diligent. This husband is just bored. However, in order to make you feel at ease, there is no harm in letting Gong Jiu take a look. Just take it as a check of the pulse. This subordinate will go and call Gong Jiu over. Imperial bodyguard Qian, who had been forced to eat dog food in the background, seized the opportunity and immediately volunteered. Go. Imperial bodyguard Qian's feet were like oil as he walked very quickly. Only Gong Jiu came in after him. It was obvious that Li Hongyuan's health was very good. Even if he was so crazy yesterday, there were no signs of kidney deficiency. Therefore, Jin Qin Wang was really idle. His wife was also busy and did not accompany him. Jingwan rubbed her eyebrows. Was this really someone who was busy fighting for power? Jingwan decided not to care about him anymore. Let him do whatever he wanted. Even if he was bored to the point of sleeping, focusing on the things at hand was the most important thing. Just like this, one was busy, the other was idle. Time passed quickly for an hour. Jingwan stretched. Yuan, in https:///11/11807/1168765. Chapter 476. It's up to you. From Li Hongyuan's point of view, there was essentially no difference between playing big and playing small. That was a fine fun. Opening the horse racing track to make money was just to see his wife happy and play around. Even if he needed money in the future, he could find it from other places. He didn't need to do anything now. His things, even if they were moldy and long grass, would not be shared with others. However, he let his wife be happy, so it didn't matter. From another point of view, this was a good opportunity. The bigger the game, the easier it would be to make a move. If some people didn't take the opportunity to do something, Li Hanyuan would be very disappointed. In the entire capital, if one wanted to know which people were better at playing and horsemanship, one would know after checking. Or if they had a group of capable ministers under them, one didn't need to deliberately check. One just had to ask, and perhaps they would know the answer. In fact, the people below did know. However, in order to achieve perfection, they didn't want to have any negligence. They still carefully checked one side. This kind of rigor had obviously become a habit. It could be imagined that those people who were far from reaching this level, when they received the invitation with Jin Qinhuang's official seal, would be very surprised, especially since they were essentially the kind of dandy young masters who didn't do proper work. Of course, as the elders of these people, their expressions were also quite wonderful. Regardless of his reputation, he was a genuine Qin Wang and deeply received the emperor's grace. Even if he only asked you to amuse him, for many people, it was a great honor. Being disliked by the family all day, the disgraceful thing who couldn't wait to be beaten 3 times a day, suddenly receiving the favor that they might not be able to get in their lifetime. The feeling in their hearts was really, if it was purely spoiled by the family, it was still okay. Perhaps the mother and grandmother in the family would clap their hands and laugh, saying that their good son and grandson had good prospects. And these people's tails would probably be raised to the sky. So what if the other brothers were powerful? Could they get Jin Qinhuang's invitation? Could they enter Jin Qinhuang's manor? Could they be invited by Jin Qinhuang to race together? However, if it was a waste of a concubine son that was specially raised by a D-mother, those D-mothers would probably vomit blood. Originally, they had suppressed him with great difficulty, but now they used this kind of method to turn things around, no matter what the consideration was. As the head of the family, he would pay more attention to it. The more ambitious he was, the more support he would give. Once the illegitimate sons got up, the D sons would certainly not have as many benefits as they originally had. Moreover, if Jin Qinhuang's whims were not just once, there would be many, many times. Then, these illegitimate sons who crawled up as D mothers would not dare to move even half a point. If they moved, perhaps they would cut off some of their own husbands' paths. Thus, they might not be able to sit on the position of the principal wife. After all, Jin Qinhuang had money, knew how to play, and had seen his superb horsemanship. Even if they were afraid of him, their hearts were still a little itchy. However, Jin Qinhuang had never taken them out to play. This time, he actually invited them to race together. Deep in their hearts, they couldn't help but be excited. Moreover, they could also be proud of their father who wanted to break their legs. This was going out to play in broad daylight. As for those who were grounded, they were even happier. Dad, it's not that I want to go out. It's Jin Qinhuang who invited me. You don't want me to go out? Fine. You went to reply to Jin Qinhuang's invitation. Encountering this kind of evil creature as the father, they definitely wanted to beat them to death. However, they really could not give Jin Qinhuang face. Therefore, looking at their own family's evil creature's proud face, they could only endure it. They actually wanted to detain the evil creatures at home, but they could not because these evil creatures still had an invitation in their hands. Jingwan didn't know if it was because of her bad taste, but those big families, not only did they send an invitation to the head of the family, they also sent an invitation to their family's best. Detain? But fortunately, they didn't only invite the best. Therefore, they naturally sent the family's most outstanding and most capable ones over. At least, they had to watch a bit and didn't make any unmanageable mess. Moreover, since the situation of each family was the same, there was also a rather good opportunity to make friends. And for those people whose status didn't reach this level, one invitation could still bring 5 people. Naturally, each had their own considerations. Even if it was the illegitimate son who could turn the tables and become indignant, she also had her own plans. Even if the illegitimate son stood out in front of Jin Qinhuang, it was still the same. But if their own child made friends with the children of the big families, then it was possible for them to soar to the sky. Thinking like this, their hearts were burning hot. Their indignation and unwillingness were thrown to one side as they thought about how to make their child stand out. And those young ladies, young women, and little Bean who had not yet grown up, their thoughts were more simple. They were curious and wanted to go take a look. After all, last year, when Jin Qinhuang built a horse farm, it could be said that it was on a grand scale. Even with the Jiangnan incident, the emperor's thunderous rage didn't stop work. Moreover, that belonged to the imperial manor, so there were few opportunities to go. With this opportunity, they naturally wanted to satisfy some curiosity and even a little vanity. Therefore, whether the advantages outweighed the disadvantages or the disadvantages outweighed the advantages, it really couldn't be generalized. These people were all invited, so Jin Qinhuang's brothers and sisters naturally couldn't be left out, regardless of whether they had left the palace or not. In fact, those who were still in the palace were even more looking forward to it. After all, for them to go out of the palace, it was countless times more difficult than for a lady to go out of the boudoir. Therefore, the horse race that was prepared this time, compared to Jingwan's idea, was a bit bigger and more lively. It could be said that all those who could attend were all present. All the participating horses were first sent to the manor 2 days before the official race and agreed that one person would follow. Finally, when the horses were gathered together, Jingwan saw that spectacular scene, and her heart was a bit hard to describe. The total number of invitations sent out, there are less than 100. These 200-plus horses, where did they come from? Replying to Wang Fei, some young masters sent more horses. The steward of the Wang Fu who was in charge of these horses tactfully replied, "Ah, how many horses are they preparing for one person to ride? But it doesn't matter. Originally, they didn't intend to let those young masters personally participate. In any case, the ultimate goal is to bet on horses and not on people. They have that kind of confidence, so it doesn't matter if they send all the horses. Each family can only send one horse. If the extra horses want to appear, let them pay the appearance fee. After all, this is the first time, so the appearance fee will be cheaper. 1,000 taels for one horse. In addition, the horses of the same family can appear in the same race. This Wang Fei is also thinking of them. After all, some people may be willing to compete by themselves. At the same time, it will be convenient for them to bet on each of their horses." They were also convinced that the Wang Fei's idea was another way to make money. It must be said that some people were bursting with confidence in their horses. 2 days later, the young masters who were preparing for the race, after getting the explanation from the people of the stud farm, thought that it was good. Wasn't it just 1,000 taels of appearance fee? It was a piece of cake. After getting the approval, they waved their hands and asked their attendants to go home and bring the other treasures at home. Speaking of which, young people were definitely not the only ones who were fond of horses. Some people have been fond of horses for their entire lives. Even if they could no longer personally ride them, they were still willing to raise a few precious horses. Such people, if given the chance, were also quite willing to bring out their treasures to show them off. Therefore, this stud farm really didn't have to worry about its prosperity. Although the people who came were all young people and children, the number of people present was not less than that of a very important banquet. The essential purpose was to have fun. Therefore, Jingwan was also simple and convenient. She only needed to entertain a few sisters-in-law. She was really surprised to see Princess Lu. It was not easy for her to be pregnant. She was still in a special period, and the pregnancy was not stable. She dared to come out and wander around. Was she really fearless, or did she have other ideas? Jingwan's eyes flashed slightly, but she did not say anything. She only asked the servants to serve her well. The things that she asked them to prepare for her were all normal and would not go wrong. Moreover, they were all passed through the hands of the people around her. However, perhaps because she was really happy, Princess Lu became much gentler. Her smile was not perfect from the beginning to the end. At least, in Jingwan's eyes, it was much more real. https:///11/11807/11725-298. Mobile edition website. Chapter 477. Sixth sister-in-law. Your manner is really beautifully managed. Seventh Wang Fei said sourly. The other sisters-in-law's hearts were not much different from hers. Obviously, they had the same status, but many times they really felt that they were dwarfed by others. That kind of stifling feeling in their hearts really made people feel very uncomfortable. In fact, the surrounding area was basically the imperial manor. The other princes and Qin Wang all had their own manors nearby. However, in comparison, Jin Qin Wang's 2 manors were the best. The location was good, and the products were abundant. Not only that, just one of them was at least twice the size of the other manors. The biggest difference was even more than 4 times. The 2 manors were more than 8 times the size. Those places were more remote, the roads were more winding, and there wasn't enough money to renovate and take care of them. But for those who could see Jin Qin Wang's manor from their own manor, comparing the two, their own manor was simply like the wilderness. Although they had long accepted their fate and knew that no matter what, they couldn't compare, but every time they saw it, they couldn't help but feel envious and jealous. Jingwan had long been accustomed to this kind of thing and didn't care. It's a waste to leave this manor alone. Even if we stay in this manor, the one next to it is enough. Moreover, our Wang Ye feels that it's strange and boring on weekdays, so this manor will be open to the public in the future for people to play. If sister-in-law and younger brothers and sisters are free, you can also come and sit. Several people listened and looked at each other in dismay. She must be joking. In any case, this was the imperial manor under the prince's name. How could it be for people to enjoy and play? It was too degrading. Just this point alone, they would be impeached. However, unless it was a major crime like treason, no matter how they impeached, they probably wouldn't be able to touch Jin Qinhuang. The corners of their mouths twitched, and they didn't say anything. The lesson of the past told them that their sisters-in-law was also not to be trifled with. If they provoked her, what would the consequences be? Wasn't the current Gong Qinhuang the best proof? She was estranged from her maternal family. Her son was isolated, her husband abandoned her, and a younger cousin was sent to the Gong Qinhuang Fu. Although she was a concubine, but she was favored more than the two Gong Qinhuang Fu. Compared to the Gong Qinhuang Fu, she was only a little worse. It could be seen that the relationship between the Gong Qinhuang Fu and the champion Marquis Fu was still close, but the left governor, the Gong Qinhuang Fu, and the Gong Qinhuang Fu seemed to be. The Gong Qinhuang Fu and the left governor, who held military power, had a grudge against each other. It was simply a matter that made people clap their hands in joy. At first, the Gong Qinhuang Fu was angry because the left governor Qin Tianming ignored him. How long had it been? He still refused to let go. He had always been humble, but it didn't change Qin Tianming's mind at all. He faintly felt that even if he continued like this, there wouldn't be a good result. Coming to this point, it could be said that he had staked everything on this one throw. He wanted to give Qin Tianming a taste of his power. However, Qin Tianming didn't react at all. He seemed to have completely abandoned his own daughter. The Gong Qinhuang Fu was so angry that he didn't know how many things he smashed, but he still couldn't do anything to Qin Tianming. The Gong Qinhuang Fu cursed Qin Tianming in all kinds of ways, his malice overflowing to the sky. He was always thinking about what he would do when he ascended the throne. However, he actually faintly understood that if he was abandoned by Qin Tianming, his chances of ascending the throne would be very slim. Unless the two people in front of him and Li Hongyuan all died, only then would it be his turn. Although he understood this in his heart, he still didn't want to admit it. However, some ideas were constantly breeding, and he didn't know when they would be put into action. Originally, it could be said that the tripartite situation had been broken. Prince Kong and Prince Rui basically didn't put this younger brother in their eyes. Of course, in Prince Kang's view, Qin Tianming was working for him in the dark. Now that he was openly falling out with that good younger brother, it didn't affect him much. On the contrary, without this connection, those who originally stood on the side of the good younger brother would probably have to reconsider. Therefore, when the other brothers tried to rope in Qin Tianming, Prince Kong sneered. Of course, he didn't forget to give Qin Tianming some benefits to strengthen the relationship between them. Facing these people, Qin Tianming's heart was tired, especially when he had to face that temperamental real master. Speaking of which, the Gongqin princess consort was his own daughter. Even if she became unbearable, it was impossible for him to completely abandon her. In the end, giving up now, to some extent, was actually protecting her. His daughter now drew a clear line between herself and the Gong Qinhuang Fu. In the future, when Jin Qinhuang Fu came to settle accounts, his daughter would be implicated as much as possible. However, he couldn't say anything, and his wife couldn't do anything about it. The Gongqin princess consort, who didn't know this, could be said to be in a state of despair. She said she was sick and didn't come out, so she really was sick. However, in the end, she was still the left governor's daughter. Even if the Gong Qinhuang disliked her, he would absolutely not torture her. These things everyone knew in their hearts, although it was very inconceivable that the left governor would go to this extent. However, the Gongqin princess consort's initial decline was indeed related to Jin Qinhuang Fu. Then, every time she had an unpleasant encounter with Jin Qinhuang Fu, her decline would increase. It was like a curse. Therefore, when Jingwan didn't know, these sisters-in-law had already decided not to provoke her easily. Not to mention a friendly relationship. At least, they wouldn't deliberately find fault with her. Therefore, at this time, Even if they were jealous, they were limited and didn't dare to go too far. Jingwan actually felt a little strange about their attitude, but she didn't like to argue with people. No one found fault with her, so naturally she was happy and relaxed. As for why there was such a change, who cares? Regardless of whether it was the race course or the leisure area, they had arranged for enough people. They were all trained, so Jingwan didn't need to worry about them at all. Although, she still had more ideas in her mind that she would slowly add to the leisure area. Of course, it was just entertainment and its influence was limited. The horse race was about to start. Jingwan took a few people to the horse track. The stand were naturally divided into levels and areas. They naturally occupied the luxurious room on the highest level. From this position, they could basically see the entire field. The 10 horses for the first round had been sent to the fence behind the starting line. A list of which horse belonged to which track had been distributed to everyone. There was still an hour before the start of the race, so everyone could place their bets on the horses they liked. Of course, in Jingwan's view, there was actually not a small drawback. The field was big, and the specific situation of the horses couldn't be seen. For those who could distinguish the horses, they lost a lot of opportunities. However, this kind of people were in the minority. The rest were still betting according to the owner of the horse. In the beginning, there were more people who just watched and didn't make a move. It was believed that after each competition, which horses could stand out, it would naturally gradually surface. But this kind of ever-victorious general, there was no need to worry that it would exist for a long time. If the result was the same every time, then what was the point? Not to mention those who lost, whether it was for money or face, they would all go and look for better horses. Jin Xinwang's precious horses were especially good-looking ones. The horse farm was Li Hongyuan's. It was his wife's idea. Naturally, she would control everything in the palm of her hand. Even the people who would manage the horse farm in the future might be sent by Lu Qingdi. Horses were basically strategic goods. Although there were people who sold horses among the people, they were in the minority. Moreover, the truly good horses wouldn't appear in those places. Therefore, there is no need to worry about the popularity of horse racing disturbing the people and causing chaos. Li Hongyuan and his other brothers were in another private room. Speaking of which, everyone wasn't stupid. After knowing someone's rules, they could basically think of the huge profit margin. After a little calculation, their hearts jumped wildly. This wasn't a hen that laid golden eggs. It was simply a gold mine. Sixth brother has good thoughts, Even with Prince Rui's composure, at this moment, his emotions were brought out. Not to mention the others, their jealousy was about to erupt in an instant. Li Hongyuan didn't care and didn't even give them a glance. Wang Fei's idea is just to earn some money for rouge and face powder. https:///11/11807/117782666. Chapter 478. Li Hongyuan didn't care and didn't even give them a glance. Wang Fei's idea is just to earn some money for the rouge and face powder. He pointed at them and gave them a look of disdain, then threw out the words, making a fuss about nothing. A few small coins were worth mentioning. In any case, he was a Qinwang. His eyelids were so shallow. These people cursed in their hearts. Who the hell would need so much money to buy rouge and face powder? All the noble ladies in the capital, including the many imperial concubines and princesses in the palace, wouldn't need so much. Besides, who didn't know that the best rouge and face powder in Rouge Pavilion was from Jin Wang Fei's prescription? Not only was there a large amount of dividends, all the rouge and face powder didn't cost a single copper. Still want rouge and face powder money? Even if you're looking for an excuse, you should be more careful. Even if you don't say anything, it's still better than now. However, no matter how much they cursed in their hearts, they couldn't say it out loud. Or rather, they didn't dare. Somewhat stifled, they pulled at their necklines and adjusted their breathing. They warned themselves to be calm and not be impulsive. If you're interested, then bet a few rounds to play. Li Hongyuan propped one hand on the armrest of the chair, propping up his chin. His other hand tapped the other side from time to time, as leisurely as he could be. Because it was the first time, the betting rules were relatively simple and crude. Moreover, it was betting on the champion and not the ranking. In the first round, betting on 1 to win 2, 10 horses in each round. So far, there are almost 16 rounds. The top 3 horses in the first round would participate in the second round, 8 horses in each round, betting on 1 to win 3. Similarly, the top 3 would participate in the third round, betting on 1 to win 5. Then the top 3 would participate in the final round, betting on 1 to win 10. As the owner of the horse, every time they won, there would be a corresponding monetary reward. If they could win from the beginning to the end, then based on this point, their pockets would rapidly expand. In the first round, the lowest bet was 10 taels, the second round was 100 taels, the third round was 1,000 taels, and the last round wasn't 10,000 taels. Instead, it was changed by Jingwan to unlimited. If it was small, it could be 1 copper coin. If it was large, it didn't matter if it was tens or hundreds of thousands. This time, even if they lost in the end, it didn't matter. Wang could completely afford it. However, this possibility was relatively small. Of course, it wouldn't be like this in the future. The odds would always be adjusted according to the number of bets and the amount bet. There probably wouldn't be a minimum limit either. In short, as the banker, he would definitely make a profit. As brothers, they had to give some face to each other. Moreover, they had their own horses to participate in the race. Not to mention others, they had to at least have some confidence in themselves. Perhaps only Li Honyuan had this privilege of not playing at all. Speaking of which, no matter how poor he was still a prince. Thus, when he made a move, he naturally couldn't lower himself to the lowest value. As the elder brother, Prince Kong bet 500 taels for each round. If this continued, several thousand taels would be spent. Prince Rue slightly reduced his base bet. However, for some unknown reason, the Gongqin Wang was completely equal to Prince Rue. Behind him, the fifth prince naturally reduced his bet a bit more. Behind him, except for Li Honyuan, the other 3 were equal to the fifth prince. And there was nothing wrong with the rest, but the Gong prince had a problem. Prince Kong was the eldest son of the first wife. Prince Rue's birth mother was an imperial concubine, while the Gong prince's birth mother was only an imperial concubine. According to reason, he should have slightly retreated from Prince Rue, and the rest should have been equal to him. However, he insisted that he was on the same level as Prince Rue, and, according to his original intention, he should have even surpassed Prince Kong. But in the end, he didn't lose his mind. Prince Rue tilted his head and glanced at him, smiling as if he didn't care at all. However, some people behind him couldn't help but tremble. Obviously, this third imperial brother's mood was very good recently. He was amiable to everyone. That smile made people feel like they were bathing in the spring breeze. But now, why did it inexplicably feel a little scary? The Gongqin Wang's expression also sank, but then, not to be outdone, he returned a smile to Prince Rue, a naked provocation. Now, even if he took advantage of the situation, so what? He was clearly in a weaker position. Now that he was happy, who knew what would happen in private? Moreover, although it was a small matter, it was enough for some officials to see the bigger picture and make a choice. So, the Gongqin Wang obviously didn't have the life of a living king of hell. So why did he want to get the living king of hell's illness? Squandering without any scruples is the living king of hell's privilege. Him suppressing you two brothers is a matter of course. No one would think it was wrong. If he really followed the rules, other people would have to worry about whether he was holding back some evil tricks. It was said that Prince Kong was a rash and impulsive person with a violent temper. In fact, the Gongqin Wang was not to be outdone. Especially now, after the Empress fell ill, Prince Kong restrained himself and appeared to be a lot calmer. Whether it was real calmness or fake calmness, in contrast, the Gongqin Wang was more and more unbearable. Among Liu Qingdi's sons, in addition to the 2 who died young, there were 8 who had already reached adulthood and were titled princes. Counting them, the number was really not small. However, the ones who were really competitive for the throne were only the first few. The ones behind, to be honest, even if they really had ambition and wanted that position, it would be very difficult for them to realize it. Because their birth mother status was not high, and they were not favored. They did not have a strong maternal family, and, similarly, they did not have a strong wife's family. As for their own talent, well, without that support, being too talented, they might even lose their lives. Apart from the external conditions, in terms of himself, Prince Rue was actually the most suitable person to sit on the throne. Whether it was his temperament or the way he handled things, although he might have a dark heart, he was actually the most concerned about face, cherishing his feathers, and paying attention to his reputation. This kind of person, even if he waited until he ascended the throne, he would still carry the title of Eternal Emperor. Therefore, even if the people who were fighting for the throne now, unless they really hated him to the bone, they would not easily kill him. Killing people would not be done openly, and they would not do it in the open. He would not even be like his father, treating someone with flowers and brocade on the surface. But in reality, he was suffering. He could give them glory, splendor, and wealth, but probably not power. In terms of ability, Prince Rue was actually very good. At one time, he was also the one who Lu Qingdi thought the most highly of, but later, Li Hongyuan secretly tampered with him, weakening Lu Qingdi's good impression of him. In fact, some people, including those who secretly supported the living king of hell, thought that Prince Rue was better as the emperor. However, after boarding the living king of hell's pirate ship, if one wanted to get off, it was not as simple as becoming a corpse and being thrown off. Of course, in terms of ability, Prince Rue naturally could not compare to Jin Xinhuang. However, if the former wanted to become the eternal emperor, he could probably only think about it. Being able to raise the current Qi Yuan by a little was already not bad. As for the latter, as long as he had a reason, he was completely capable of pushing the Qi Yuan into a flourishing age. However, Li Hongyuan's temperament was treacherous and hard to understand. He could become the monarch of a flourishing age, but he could also go to the other extreme. A lot of things were probably within his thoughts. If he were to bet on Prince Rue, he would be able to proceed smoothly without any worries. However, if he were to bet on Prince Rue, there would be a considerable risk. It could be a high return, or it could be a loss. In fact, regarding Jin Xinhuang's love for his Wang Fei and his willingness to restrain himself for his Wang Fei, people like the head of the cabinet Wan Rue Zhong and the left governor Qin Tianming were happy to see it. Because Jin Xinhuang was really too special. If there was someone who could slightly restrain him, and this person had a sense of righteousness and propriety and guide Jin Xinhuang in a good direction, then they would have no objections even if Jin Xinhuang only favored him. For them, the country was actually the most important. And the Minister of Personnel, Luo Peishan, was even more selfish. He did not like Jin Xinhuang Fu's harem becoming chaotic even more. Therefore, when some people jumped out so fiercely some time ago, these people did not participate in the slightest. Even if they guessed that those women's mishap was not because they were restrained, but because they were tampered with, their hearts did not have the slightest fluctuation. They even hoped that this situation could continue to be maintained, not only for Jin Xinhuang to ascend the throne in the future, but also for the next emperor. For an emperor who grew up in a good environment, even if it was worse, there was at least a 30% chance that it would not be the case. Jingwan simply did not know these things. She did not know that in the future, even if she monopolized the harem, the court officials would not have too much objection to her. At this moment, the first horse race had already begun. https://11/11/11807/118266656. Chapter 479. For a woman, she could still maintain her composure when she saw such a scene. However, she had never seen such a scene before, so she was also affected by the surrounding environment. Her face was slightly flushed, and her eyes were filled with uncontrollable excitement. She even clenched her handkerchief tightly in her hand. In a relatively crowded place, she could restrain herself, but in a private room, she was surrounded by acquaintances, so she didn't have to do so. She could cheer without caring about her image, just like the typical Yuan Qiao Qiao. Of course, the children basically didn't have any concerns. At this time, the atmosphere was too lively. No matter whether it was the brothers or sisters or the nannies serving them, no one restrained them. After all, many people were like this now. If they forcibly restrained them, wouldn't they be hated? Not only their own family members, but also other people's children. Everyone was unruly and improper. If they taught their own children, others would be implicated. In Li Hongyuan's private room, at the beginning, everyone could still sit still. The first one who couldn't sit still was naturally Prince Kong, because this was the first game and his horse was in it. Speaking of which, Jingwan was kind enough to separate all the princes and princes' horses. According to Li Hongyuan's character, he could put all of them in the same game. At the beginning, they would be at daggers drawn and bows bent. It was fine if they fought for power, but when it came to entertainment, they shouldn't make it like a battlefield. Since they were horses raised in the prince's mansion, they were certainly not bad. As time went by, the distance they covered was constantly increasing. The 10 horses were almost divided into 3 camps. Prince Rue's horse was in the first camp, and there was only 1 horse in the second camp. They were very close to each other, chasing each other. At most, they were only 1 horse's head away from each other. If it weren't for the rules of the competition, the people on the 2 horses might have already fought. Competitions, especially those that were very competitive, often had the charm to make people's blood boil. Of course, it was also possible to make enemies. After all, people cared about their reputation. There were often more people who couldn't afford to lose than those who had a good mentality and could afford to lose. Prince Kong had long ignored the others and rushed to the front of the private room. There were no windows, only a waist-high half of the wall. Prince Kong was abnormally agitated, either waving his hands in excitement or smashing his fists in anger. Words like run, quickly, and trash came out of his mouth. What was his image? What was his brotherhood? All of it was thrown beyond the highest heavens. In the end, Prince Kong lost, and it was only by a very small margin. Prince Kong turned around with a dark face. Give me the name list. Ben Wang wants to see who can raise such a good horse. His words seemed to be filled with praise, but his expression and tone were as if he wanted to eat someone alive. What he wanted to express was that he wanted to see who had the guts to win despite knowing that it was his horse. Others might be disdainful, mocking, or gloating. Prince Kong grabs the list handed over by a close attendant. After looking at it, he sneers, "A mere 6th-rank official can also afford to raise such a good horse? This prince is very suspicious of the origin of this horse." It was clear that he wanted to use public office to avenge private wrongs, yet he still found such a high-sounding reason. According to common sense, a 6th-rank official's salary really couldn't afford to raise a precious horse, but he still couldn't allow people to have a bit of background. From beginning to end, the calmest one was probably Li Hongyuan, his posture still leisurely. It's merely a few thousand taels, nothing more. If eldest imperial brother can't afford to lose, Ben Wang won't let people take your money. It's not a big deal. It's just that there's one thing that eldest imperial brother needs to know. Today, every horse's owner is a guest invited by Ben Wang. If eldest imperial brother wants to do something, you should consider it carefully. The furious Prince Kang's complexion congealed as he looked at Li Hongyuan. As a result, when Li Hongyuan spoke to him, he didn't even look at him. Prince Kong huffed and puffed. "What can I do? Lao Lu is thinking too much." That's right, those who participated in the horse race, no matter what their status was, were all holding onto Jin Xinwang's invitation. If because of a competition, it ended up attracting a calamity, where would the living king of hell put his face? Moreover, it was bound to affect other people with relatively lower status. Then, wouldn't this competition go against some of Jingwan's ideals? Would the living king of hell allow it? As for not giving Prince Kong face, it's just that the horse is inferior to others, the skill is inferior to others, and you still want to complain that others didn't let you? If it was someone else, you could still use your power to suppress them, but you met someone that the living king of hell wanted to protect. Prince Kong sat down and couldn't act out, at least not now. As for whether he would act in private, it was hard to say. However, even if he acted in private, this face would still be lost, and this elegance would also be gone. The others secretly watched as a joke, but they were also a bit worried that they would encounter the same thing. However, it was useless to think about it now. If they really did encounter it, at least they couldn't show that they were narrow-minded. There were a lot of people who had the same worries as them, because before, they bought horses based on the person. Prince, how could the horse race be bad? Absolutely not. Therefore, many people actually bought Prince Kang's horse in the first round. As a result, they lost. Naturally, they wouldn't be so reassured about the later rounds. After all, they had already bought it, so it couldn't be changed. However, the people later on didn't have Prince Kang's bad luck. Even a sickly fifth Wang Ye's horse was first in that round. This was a bit unexpected. After all, because of fifth Wang Ye's health, he wasn't interested in horses and the like. His horse was actually used to make up the numbers, and it was only a horse that he had obtained by chance. Therefore, among all the Wangs, only Prince Kang lost. This time, he completely lost face. He once suspected that this was simply Li Hongyuan's deliberate arrangement in order to make him lose face. Obviously, Prince Kang thought too much. If the living King Yama really wanted to scheme against him, would it be over just to make him lose face? After that, with the participation of these masters, the situation of betting in the later rounds wasn't as concentrated as in the beginning. People wouldn't bet based on the title of each other's father. After all, some things were really hard to predict, and under such circumstances, the competition was more exciting. However, this was probably the only time such a situation would happen according to the owner's bet. When the first round was over, some people's necks were already hoarse. However, they felt more excited. Really, it was very exciting. After all, this was the first time they experienced it. Sometimes, they even wished they could be the ones who did it. However, it was already late. The second round would be in the afternoon. Originally, the blood was already boiling. They couldn't wait to know the final result immediately. In particular, those who won a lot of money in the first round probably had never experienced the experience of earning a lot of money in an instant. That kind of feeling was really quite fleeting. Then, greed quietly grew in the bottom of their hearts, and they wanted more. However, the arrangement of the competition was not up to them. Moreover, after a fast run, the horse always needed time to recover its strength. The closer the horse was to the back, the more so it was. Although the whole course of the competition didn't consume much of the horse's energy. During lunch, many people still didn't stop talking and kept discussing. https:///11/11/11807/119-74957. Chapter 480. However, halfway through the meal, everyone heard a tiger's roar. Because it came too suddenly, everyone was startled at first. Then, someone shouted, "Tiger," and the scene immediately became restless. Tigers were no joke. Even if they hadn't seen one before, they definitely knew how ferocious tigers were. As the saying goes, one's face would turn pale at the mention of a tiger. Fear was unforgettable. Moreover, listening to the roar, it seemed to be very close. Who wouldn't panic? Moreover, it was said that there was a rare beast garden in this manor. There were countless rare and exotic beasts in it. Perhaps this tiger was one of them. The more they thought about it, the more panicked they became. They also felt that the tiger's roar was getting closer and closer. Li Honyuan put down his chopsticks. Eunuch Mu immediately handed him a wet towel. He took it and then slowly wiped his mouth. Then, he changed to another towel to wipe his hands. He looked unmoved, as if he didn't hear anything. After wiping his hands, he threw the towel back. Seeing him like this, the other masters at the same table also restrained themselves and didn't move. It was too embarrassing to show fear. Imperial bodyguard Qian rushed over. Obviously, he came because of the tiger. "What's the matter?" Li Honyuan asked faintly. "Master, 2 tigers in the rare beast garden ran out. The guards there couldn't stop them and ran to the horse farm. The tigers hurt a few people. Now, they're trying to drive the tigers back. If they don't listen, just kill them. Why waste so much effort?" It was obviously a very ferocious thing, but in his mouth, it was so understated. It was like pinching an ant to death. Yes, After Imperial bodyguard Qian left, Li Hongyuan poured another cup of wine. It's just a small matter. I just don't know who did it. It's so clumsy. Could it be that someone thinks that killing a few people can affect this prince? Huh. When the few people present heard this, they did not respond. However, they all had different thoughts. How should they put it? They were not only worried that if they responded, the fire would burn them. When facing Li Hongyuan, apart from the fifth prince, there was probably no one who did not think of the problem of killing him. Especially in the current situation, it could be said that he was blocking the path of too many people. Now that such a thing had happened, they were all suspicious of each other. Who was the culprit? Although Li Hongyuan would not be able to completely suppress the death of a few people, if the people who died were more important, then even His Majesty would have to deal with it. After all, there is no difference between nobility and lowliness. How could the final result be the same when a few commoners died and a few high-ranking officials and nobles died? For the former, it was not impossible for Lu Qingdi to suppress it. However, for the latter, the difficulty was too great. Therefore, if the appearance of the tiger at the horse farm was not an accident but man-made, then it was obvious that they did not feel that this plan was clumsy. Or, even if it did not succeed, as long as the tail was cleaned up, it did not matter. If the first time did not succeed, then the second time. If the second time did not succeed, then the third time. If the precious beast garden did not succeed, then the horse farm did. If the horse farm did not succeed, then the manor did. There was a saying that went, "There are thieves for 1,000 days. There are no thieves for 1,000 days." Jin Xinwang only had that little amount of manpower. If he could really make it watertight, then there would be a problem. As long as it was not like an iron bucket, then there would be a flaw. In the beginning, there was no need to think about his name. It could be done in a roundabout way. As long as His Majesty's favor towards him was weakened, it would be even better if His Majesty disliked him. After that, it would be much easier. Therefore, they did not think that under this kind of condition, some people had strangely reached an agreement in their hearts. With regards to their thoughts, Li Hongyuan did not know. However, even if he knew, he would not care. His current attitude was that he would not take the initiative to expose anything. However, if some people were to sense it, then he would not care at all. Moreover, this time's horse race was such a big spectacle. It was to give some people a chance. If nothing really happened, then it would be disappointing. It was just that his own wife was kind-hearted and would not involve innocent people. After all, the open and covert struggles between these people could easily take someone's life. Therefore, the horse farm and the people who came and went were strictly guarded. There must not be any slip-ups. If there was a problem with the horse and it went crazy in the competition, the probability of someone losing their life was too high. Li Hongyuan felt that it was a pity that he was not able to make use of this point. It was just that this idea of using the precious beast garden, Li Hongyuan's eyes darkened, and he finished the wine in his hand in one gulp. Compared to Li Hongyuan's calmness, Jingwan was not so calm. It was not because she was afraid, but because the tiger had hurt someone. One must know that the animals in the precious beast garden were all wild. Their bestial nature and wildness, their lethality was absolutely terrifying. In the absence of anesthetics, the tiger had hurt someone and could not be brought back. Li Hongyuan gave the order to kill, and Jingwan could only remain silent. However, the matter did not end there. Just as Jingwan was quietly waiting for the result, a servant hurried over. Even if the order to kill was given, someone still died. Moreover, this person was not a servant, but a son of an aristocratic family. Jingwan almost cursed. If this matter was not caused by someone, she would write the name backwards. https:///11/11807/119749959. Chapter 481. Jingwan almost swore. If this matter wasn't man-made, she would write her name backwards. She didn't mind if someone tampered with it, but she wasn't prepared for someone to die. Jingwan stood up. "I have something to do. Excuse me for a moment." Her expression was particularly cold, even a bit sharp, as she walked away. Outsiders had never seen Jingwan like this before. No matter what the rumors about Jin Qinhuang Fei were, most of the people that outsiders came into contact with were absolutely gentle and good-tempered. Some people even felt that she didn't seem like someone from the imperial family and damaged the dignity of the imperial family. Looking at her now, they were completely wrong. Thinking about it, no matter how she used to be, after marrying into the imperial family, she was at least 30% worse. Compared to Jingwan, even if he knew that someone had died, Li Honyuan didn't have the intention to get up and deal with it. He only set a hand over to Wang Fei. Moreover, on their side, it wasn't the people below who whispered to Li Honyuan, but directly said it out loud. Once Li Hongyuan's words came out, the people around them started to speculate, thinking that Li Honyuan wanted to use his Wang Fei as a scapegoat. Obviously, this matter would be brought to Lu Qingdi, and according to Lu Qingdi's preference for Jin Qinhuang, it was believed that he would be very happy to have someone take the blame for his son, even if that person was his daughter-in-law. The people who were secretly delighted just a moment ago couldn't help but secretly scold Li Honyuan for being shameless. But they never thought that if they encountered a similar matter, they would definitely push their own daughter-in-law out. The main culprit and the accomplice were two different things. Moreover, the matter of not teaching strictly couldn't even be counted as an accomplice. After all, that was a daughter-in-law, not a child. Her moral upbringing was more on the head of the in-law's family than the husband's family. However, Li Hongyuan's gaze swept over the body of the guard who reported to him. Someone died in the master's territory, and he directly shouted it out. Should he say that this kind of person was honest and straightforward, or was it something else? One must know that even if the master didn't care, the final decision should be made by the master. Sigh, even if he wasn't a demon, such a person should be properly trained. If he was, then all the more he should be trained to the point of death. Training to the point of death would count. When Jingwan arrived at the scene, the tiger had already become a corpse. The ground was dripping with blood, and the smell of blood was very strong. In addition, there was a mat under which, most likely, the aristocratic family's son. The smell of blood made Jingwan feel a little nauseous. She covered her mouth and nose with a handkerchief. Tell me the details. Your Highness, the situation is like this. The situation was originally under control, and the irrelevant people were stopped outside. We were working together to kill the tiger. Unexpectedly, someone suddenly rushed in. The tiger was already furious, and when this person rushed in, the tiger directly opened its mouth. We didn't even have time to react before we were buried in the tiger's mouth. Now he understood that he was just throwing his life away. Jingwan curled her lips coldly. She didn't hesitate to use her own life to plot against her husband. Of course, she wouldn't have the slightest bit of mercy. Which family is he from? Your Highness, he is the only son of Secretary Bai. Jingwan was slightly startled and frowned. Things were really a little troublesome. Although the Bai family was not a top noble family, the most promising branch of it was Lu Qingdi's family. The former Empress Dowager Bai was a smart person. At the very beginning, she didn't let her niece be her son's princess. Later, after Lu Qingdi ascended the throne, she didn't let any white girl enter the palace. She even suppressed her family. She didn't let her family stand out, and she never interfered in the political affairs. When Lu Qingdi ascended the throne, he couldn't do without the Empress Dowager and Lady Bai. Empress Dowager Bai's behavior naturally won the favor of Lu Qingdi. Before Empress Dowager Bai died, the relationship between mother and son had been very good. When Empress Dowager Bai died, Lu Qingdi was so sad that he didn't go to court for a month. When Empress Dowager Bai died, she didn't have any other request. She just hoped that Lu Qingdi could take care of her family. She didn't want them to be rich or noble. As long as they didn't violate the law, he would protect them from being bullied. How could Lu Qingdi not agree to such a low request? Therefore, although the Bai family was not prominent and was very low-key, many people didn't even know about it. In the entire capital, the Bai family was definitely in the top 3 families that couldn't be provoked. If the one who died was an ordinary member of the Bai family, it would be fine. The problem was that the Bai family didn't have many children. Empress Dowager Bai only had one brother and one younger brother, no sisters. The younger brother was only a few years older than Luchengdi. He didn't have much ability, but basically didn't cause any trouble. Now, he was still alive, and his children and grandchildren were not bad. The problem was that Luchengdi's first uncle only had one son, the current secretary Bai. Luchengdi's first uncle was also a cabinet minister. After Empress Dowager Bai's death, he resolutely resigned on the grounds that he was not feeling well. However, bravely retreating was one thing. Another thing was to make way for his son. The current secretary Bai also had some difficulties in having children. In fact, in order to continue the bloodline, he had many wives and concubines. However, he had more than a dozen daughters. It wasn't easy for him to have a son. It was conceivable that such a single son was valued. https:///11/11807/119756662. That you're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.